update on what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. Russia is in utter rage. End of Kherson. Russians are abandoning Chaplinka base, withdrawing to Crimea. What is happening? The end of Kherson and left of the Dnieper River, the Russians abandoned the Chaplinka base and they're withdrawing to Crimea. Report of domino effects developing. There's huge anger in Moscow. The politicians are saying the leadership nullified all our victories. I mean, that is a very strange and significant declaration. Could that be considered treason for Putin? So they're saying leadership nullified all our victories. The report of Russian military and analysts about the movements of the Russian leadership that gave the green light to withdraw from the right bank of the Dnieper and the city of Kherson. We know that yesterday they said we will do everything, we will not give up the Dnieper River. And they did, it looks like. The Russians revealed that with the abandonment of the bridgehead on the right bank of the Dnieper River, the leadership gave the order to abandon their base as well, annihilating all the profits from the start of the Russian operation, which happened on the 24th of February. According to information, the Russian army is strengthening defensive fortifications and defense lines in northern Crimea and the adjacent part of the region with Kherson. This happens because Ukrainians put all of Kherson up to some areas of Crimea within artillery range, so is the Crimean land corridor and freshwater supply. Unthinkable things are happening. What they reveal paints a picture of a Russian tragedy, unless they are preparing to blow up the Kakhovskaya Dam. The shots in Moscow are now hitting Vladimir Putin himself. This is reflected in the article by the analyst of the RIA Novosti agency Pyotr Akopov, who goes so far as to parallel the criticisms leveled against Surovikin, by extension Defense Minister Shoigu, but in the final analysis also against Vladimir Putin, who as president is also commander-in-chief of Russia, with the civil war atmosphere of Russia in 1916. The Prime Minister, Boris Sturmer, was accused of secret negotiations with Germany for the signing of a peace treaty. Sturmer was forced to resign. Russia entered the war in 1917. The October Revolution followed. In the range of the Ukrainian artillery, the land bridge of Crimea, after the retreat of Russian troops and their transition to the left bank of the Dnieper in Kherson, the armed forces of Ukraine have the opportunity to put the logistical support roads supplying units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation under the control of the Ukrainian artillery. Serhiy Kuzan, advisor to the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, emphasized in an interview with the Financial Times, he said, "Thus, in the event that the armed forces occupy the right bank of the Dnieper River, the Ukrainian artillery can bombard the land bridge to Crimea Peninsula. Hence the highways Kherson-Armyansk, Kherson-Melitopol, and Melitopol-Donskoy, and according to Kuzan, this will be a big blow for the Russian forces. Along with this, the ammunition depots and logistics centers of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, which ensure the fulfillment of the tasks of the Russian special operation in the southern direction, will be located in the zone of the destruction of the Ukrainian armed forces. Russian units will withdraw to Crimea." This is huge. This development is really huge for a Russian defeat of Russia. According to information, the Russian army is strengthening defensive fortifications and defense lines in northern Crimea and the adjacent part of the Kherson region. Russian sources say that the main units of the Russian army in the southern direction may withdraw to the mentioned area. In this case, we're talking about the transfer of units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation from the Chaplinka base in the Kherson region, located about 30 kilometers from Crimea. Such a rearrangement is a forced measure and is directly related to the abandonment of the right bank in the Kherson region. And yesterday they said they would never give up the Dnieper River. Well, today things have changed, as you can see. in a very dismal way against the Russians. The Russians are retreating. The Russians will be forced into this move as the Ukrainians from the higher bank of the Dnieper will be able to bombard Russian targets with M142 HIMARS and M270 MLRS 227mm. At the same time, Chaplinka base will become the first target to be hit by American artillery. On February 24, Russian troops took control of the Chaplinka base. The Russians turned the abandoned local airport into a full military base, and from there, Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopters were regularly deployed on missions to support Russian forces units in the Zaporizhia, Kherson, Nikolaev regions. This means that the main units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in the south can be withdrawn as far as Crimea. Now, a significant part of the Russian equipment has left Chaplinka, the base there, but a small number of helicopters are still located there to provide cover for the Russian units being transported from the right bank. There's no doubt that later they will leave this place as well. Abandoning the Chaplinka base will have a negative impact on the quality and effectiveness of air support for Russian troops in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. Moreover, Chaplinka base will not be the only one like this, an abandoned military base. This is explained by the 90-kilometer range of the American JMLRS missiles. Crimea's land corridor and water supply is at risk. Russian media continue to take shots at the Russian military and political leadership. They specifically mention this. In fact, what is happening simply does not fit in our heads if we judge it from the point of view of the national interests of Russia. The main problem, which everyone involved had been trumpeting literally since the first days of the special operation, was the severe lack of forces allocated to it by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, that's of course Putin. Both offense and defense required numerous well-armed, trained, and motivated infantry. We saw in the Kharkiv region what happened after the counterattack by the armed forces of Ukraine, when the armed forces of the Russian Federation were forced to hastily abandon their positions to avoid being encircled. Shortly thereafter, Liman surrendered. Everyone feared a repeat of the Kupiansk, Izium, Limansky scenario on the southern front, where the situation was a little better. However, on September 21st, President Putin announced the start of a partial mobilization in the country, and the situation gradually began to improve. Remember that he asked 300,000 conscripts to get into service. Now, on October 28, Defense Minister Shoigu reported to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, that's of course Putin, that the plan to mobilize 300,000 reservists had been completed, of which 82,000 had already been sent to the zone of operations, in Ukraine of course. The number of the Russian group in Kherson was estimated at 20,000 soldiers. Everyone expected that already in November-December, where several 100,000 additional reserves would arrive in the front, and then it would be possible to launch our counterattack. Our priority directions were Krivorovsko, Nikolaeva, and Odessa, which would give Russia a strategic victory over the Kiev regime. A key condition was the preservation of the bridgehead on the right bank by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. However, everything changed. Instead of a counterattack and the implementation of the conventional defense like Stalingrad, supported by left bank artillery and airstrikes, Russian troops were ordered to evacuate from the right bank, surrendering them to the enemy without a fight. What did he give us? First, due to the threat of flooding of the low left bank as a result of the Ukrainians' undermining of the Kakhovskaya hydroelectric station, the armed forces of the Russian Federation were moved to positions prepared in advance. I wonder what we will do if the Ukrainians don't blow up the dam, but just start pouring water out of it quickly, flooding our side first. Second, Crimea's reliable water supply will now be called into question. The Russian authorities could not solve this problem completely for 8 years, but by peaceful means, and this could only be done by military means. Yes, the main structures of the North Crimean Canal, through which the peninsula receives fresh water from the Dnieper, are located at Tavrisk on the left bank. However, the entry of the Ukrainian armed forces into the Dnieper will allow them to carry out continuous rocket and artillery bombardment of the Russian sea transport infrastructure, eventually rendering it useless, as happened earlier with the Antonovsky Bridge and the crossing over the hydroelectric dam Kakhovskaya. Third, the Kherson, Armyansk, Kherson, Melitopol, Dzhankoy highways are under enemy fire control. That is, this is the same land corridor to Crimea, the control of which was considered the second indisputable victory of Russia during the special operation after the resumption of fresh water supply to Crimea. From the higher right bank of the Dnieper, the armed forces of Ukraine will be able to shell the roads leading to the peninsula, disrupting its supply as well as Crimea itself, its northern part. If Washington provides Ukraine, Kiev, with missiles with a range of 300 kilometers, then from Kherson, abandoned by Russian troops, the Ukrainians will be able to freely cover the main naval base of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation, Sevastopol. Forget it. Russia has been defeated. They will do that then. In other words, the positive results for Crimea from the special operation 9 months after its launch are in danger of being nullified. If the armed forces of Ukraine released from Kherson are able to ensure a successful offensive towards Berdyansk, this land corridor, quote-unquote, will be completely cut off from the peninsula, and the peninsula will turn into an island besieged by the enemy. The safety of the Crimea bridge in such conditions is of great concern. Ukrainian saboteurs have already proven once that they can beat it. The Ukrainian helmets strengthen their forces in Svatovo and Kremnaya because of Kherson. Ukrainian troops began to be reinforced in the Kharkiv, Kremnaya, and Svatovo regions. In the context of the withdrawal of Russian troops to the left bank of the Dnieper, it became known that part of the Ukrainian Kherson group, we can talk about 5,000 to 7,000 military personnel, suddenly began to move in a northern direction. According to some sources, large forces of the armed forces of Ukraine are currently being sent to the Kharkiv region to reinforce the existing group of troops in the Kremnaya Svatovo regions, which indicate that the Ukrainians are preparing a general offensive in this direction. It is known that Ukrainian troops have already made several unsuccessful attempts to capture the settlements of Svatovo and Kremnaya. Now the Ukrainian troops can be reinforced at the expense of the liberated reserves in the Kherson region. So, as you can see, this is from War Use 247, translated from a Greek article. And this is terrible. You're seeing that the Russian officials themselves are saying that Putin has basically lost, and that everything that has taken place since the operation, Russia calls it an operation, they don't call it an invasion or a war, they call it a quote-unquote operation, has been nullified. In other words, the Russians are losing, and it's just a matter of hours or days. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.